This chocolate bar hasn't changed its design in years. Same wrapper, same logo, same position on the shelf. You could walk past it 1,000 times without thinking anything has changed. But what if I told you that what you're holding today is not the same product people were buying years ago? Not in size, not in weight, and not in value. And the strange part is, almost nobody notices. Because nothing looks different on the outside. This is happening everywhere around you, and it has a name: shrinkflation. Most people think inflation only means one thing: prices going up. You see it in the news, you feel it at the checkout, you complain about it for a while. But there's another form of inflation. One that doesn't change the number on the price tag. It changes what's inside. Instead of making products more expensive in a visible way, companies start reducing the quantity inside. Same price, less product. And the reason it works is psychological. People are extremely sensitive to price changes, but they're far less sensitive to small changes in weight or volume. A product going from $2 to $2.50 feels immediate. It feels like a loss. But a product going from 200 grams to 180 grams, most people don't even realize. And companies know this very well. Because over time, they study how people shop. What they discover change everything. Consumers don't read labels every time they buy something. They rely on recognition, familiarity, shape, brand memory. If the packaging looks the same, the brain assumes the product is the same. So instead of changing what you notice first, they change what's inside. And this is where shrinkflation becomes invisible. But this behavior didn't appear out of nowhere. There is a historical pattern that helps explain it. It doesn't come from economics alone, it comes from marketing. In the early and mid-20th century, as mass consumer brands began to dominate global markets, companies discovered something fundamental about human behavior. People don't compare products scientifically, they compare them visually. This led to a major shift in how products were designed. Brands stopped focusing only on what was inside the product and started focusing on how the product was perceived. Packaging became just as important as the product itself. By the 1950s and the 60s, with the rise of supermarket culture, packaging design became standardized, not just for efficiency, but for recognition. Colors, shapes, layouts, and branding were optimized so that products could be identified instantly on a shelf without thinking. The goal wasn't to make consumers analyze more, it was to make them analyze less, to create shortcuts in the brain. Familiarity became trust, and once that trust was established visually, something important became possible. Companies could adjust the actual contents of a product without breaking the visual trust. Because consumers were reacting to grams or milliliters, they were reacting to identity. And that is the same psychological foundation shrinkflation relies on today. Take chocolate bars, for example. One of the most common patterns over time has been gradual reductions in size while maintaining identical packaging design. The product looks unchanged on the shelf, but when compared across years, the difference becomes clear. The same pattern happens in chips. Snack brands often rely on packaging perception, where airspace, bag shape, and visual fullness influence how much product people think they're getting. A full-looking bag does not necessarily mean a full bag. Cereals follow the same logic. Boxes remain large and visually stable, but internal weight has decreased in many cases over time. Even ice cream containers and drinks follow similar patterns, using shape, thickness, and design to influence perception of volume. What's important is that none of these changes are obvious on their own. You don't notice them day by day, only over time. And most people don't, because companies don't just change products, they change perception. Supermarkets reinforce this behavior. They are designed for fast decisions, not detailed analysis. People rarely stop to compare net weight differences between similar products. They rely on instinct, on recognition, on habit, and companies rely on that behavior. But why does shrinkflation happen? The answer is cost pressure. Raw materials become more expensive over time. Transportation costs rise. Energy becomes more expensive. Supply chains become more complex. And companies face a choice. They can increase prices directly, which customers immediately notice and often reject. Or they can reduce the quantity slightly, which most people won't notice. And in most cases, they choose the second option because it is less visible, less controversial, and easier to implement gradually. But over time, the effect compounds. A small reduction here, a slightly small package there, another subtle adjustment years later. Individually, none of these changes feel significant, but together they reshape what normal means. And that is where things start to feel strange. People begin to notice something without being able to explain it. Products don't last as long. Groceries feel smaller. Money doesn't stretch the same way it used to. But there is no single moment you can point to. No announcement, no clear change, no visible break in pattern. Just slow adjustment hidden inside familiar packaging. And maybe that's the most important part, because shrinkflation doesn't need to hide information completely. The net weight is still there. The data is still available, but it is no longer what people look at first. And in a world where attention is limited, that is enough. Over time, these changes how we experience everyday products, not in a dramatic way, but in a gradual one, until one day, you compare what you remember with what exists now, and realize they are no longer the same. The packaging stayed familiar, the branding stayed consistent, the price barely changed, but the product inside did. And once you start noticing it, you begin to see it everywhere, in almost everything you buy.